What's up, dudes? HW here. Yo, I'm just hanging out on Friday night, doing some thinking. Just doing some thinking over a nice Diet A&W. I see a lot of people, they're like complaining in the comments. You know, I'm playing the new Kemper right now. And you can see it right here. I got like a fixed effect on. And I got like a little, this is the Dumble Phoenix on the rock setting. Sounds great, man. It sounds really killer. And I got a little bit of chorus on in the back here. Check this out. Just a little bit of chorus on in the back, you know? Could I use the other chorus? I probably could, but I'm not using my main compressor. I'm kind of liking this compressor. It kind of does what I like about a compressor, but without getting too much in the way. I like this compressor. I bet it's just like this one. It just has some fixed values, you know? But anyway, I dig these new fixed effects, but I see a lot of people talking in the comments of like the last video I made, and they're like, oh, this isn't that much of an upgrade, or like, oh, it's just like, it looks better. The Kemper should have done this, should have done that. And I just wanted to share with you my thoughts about where I think we're going in Kemper world. Now, I don't have any real like inside information, you know, so a video like this is really just speculation. It's just my speculation. I'm a big Kemper fan, you know. I think they make stuff that just replicates amps really well. You know? It just feels good. It's a good feeling. But I think if we take the things we know, right, which are like, let's speculate for a minute. And by the way, like I said, this isn't inside information, because if I had a bunch of inside information and I had signed like NDAs and stuff, I wouldn't be able to tell you stuff. Like I wouldn't make a video like this, you know, because it would do nothing but get me into trouble, right? But like, I got an email about, hey, like we're going to be testing the new profiling, you know? And so I'm like, yeah, I want to test the new profiles. Like, I want to test a new profiling thing. I'd love to be a part of that, right? But like, I don't get some like, a lot of people think like Tone Junkie must know what's going on. Y'all, I don't get some like big weekly update from Christoph like, dear HW, here's what I worked on this week, right? It's like, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So, you know, I see a lot of things from people on the boards and stuff. I get information there. And one of the things I think we know that's really interesting is we know that the profile player was one of these new Mark II Kempers right out of the gate, right? And we knew that it had a different processor. And there had been rumors in the past about the old Kemper processor being discontinued. And so I don't know if it was or it wasn't. There was a bunch of people saying they're not going to be able to keep making the Kemper. They're, obviously they just went with a different processor. And I think in going with that different processor, they have more DSP, they have more power than they did, 13 years ago. And so they've now integrated that processor into the profiler. And that gives us the Profiler Mark II. It's the profiler that we all have, and they're not selling the original profiler anymore. You know, this is the new profile. They've switched, the processor, and I don't know what they've had to do else that's changed, but it looks like they gave it a bit of a facelift, right? And I think with that DSP, that new processing power, and I've put this in videos before because of the way the software is written, I think they have a lot more horsepower to work with. And so I think there's a lot more coming That's my big speculation. I think we've only scratched the surface of what's going to be possible in some of these new units. Let me like throw some stuff out there. We don't know, by the way, you know, how many times they wrote a reverb algorithm or a harmonic tremolo algorithm or a spring reverb algorithm, and it had to be redone because it was too big or it didn't work. And you might remember when the Quad Cortex launched, you could only put one reverb per line. And so at the time, a lot of people were saying, well, this is supposed to be the most powerful unit ever, the Quad Cortex, right? But you could only put one reverb. And then Quad Cortex did an update where they redid the reverbs to take up less DSP so that you could put multiple. And because they had their limitation was hardware. The hardware was out there. And so they had to redo it. Kemper, this is the first time. Kemper has given us, like, I just want to throw out there, like, why I think there's a lot more coming in terms of updates and why I think there's a lot more coming in terms of capability, what the units can do. First is this. One is Kemper, since I got into Kemper, they've given us speaker imprints, which was a whole new like speaker modeling thing, the Kemper cone that was all together, right? This unit had, they built in the ability for it to model speakers and calibrate itself to this other Kemper cone that Celestion made them. And so that none of that capability was there up front, but they saw that, hey, none of the other units on the market have like a cab that goes with it. I think at the time the Helix did, but that was about it. And and Kemper being the only unit that has like a built-in power amp in some of the models, they came out with their own speaker and said, pair it with this speaker. Now they have a powered version of the cab. But at the time when it first launched, there was no powered version of the cab. So they gave us speaker imprints. They gave us all new delays, all new reverbs. The new tremolos are awesome. I haven't done enough content about the new tremolos, but the harmonic tremolo is killer. It's absolutely great in the Kemper. Some of the tremolo stuff is really wild, what you can do with the stereo field and stuff. They've given us all that stuff. They gave us liquid profiling. And they gave us the Kemper drive, the Kemper fuzz. The only thing I would ask for that they haven't given us more of is more modulation stuff. But they kind of started doing some of that with the tremolos, But, I remember being there and Christoph saying, well, what kind of, you say you want more reverbs. What kinds of reverbs do you want? And I described to him the reverbs I want, the pedals I was wanting. I remember, they were asking, hey, what types of drives would you like to see in the Kemper? And they ended up coming out with all the big drives. They ended up coming out with the Kemper drive that did the Klon, that does the Timmy, that does the OCD, that does, they did the whole Kemper fuzz thing. They've done so much over the years, and I see a lot of people really quick to like, oh, it's over. I don't know what it's going to look like in the future between, there's an update for the new the Mark II, or this works on the Mark I also. I don't know where any of that's going. I'm sure there's going to be updates, continued support for the Mark I Kempers. They're still going to work just like they do. I doubt they're going to cut support. I keep seeing all these people like, tell us if you're going to cut support. It's like, how about they just tell you if they're going to cut it? Like, why do you assume they're going to cut it? I don't know. But here's my real prediction. I really think actually that we're going to get some really big updates in terms of capability. And I think just flat out we're going to get the Kemper's going to run 2 amps, one to each side. And you're going to be, I really think that. And I'm going to tell you why I think that. I think that because I don't know how they're going to lay it out. I don't know how they're going to do it exactly. And I don't even know any tech spec about all of this, like, this processor can do this and this processor can do that. I don't have to know any of that. All I know is 13 years later, they went with a new processor, and they'd be absolute dummies if they didn't upgrade the processor significantly. And I think we know from what I've seen written about it, it is a significant upgrade. And so now they have the ability to use there's all this extra DSP. So much so that they gave us the ability to run 8 more effects on all at once. And that's one of the things people forget about the Kemper. When it says you can run 16 effects now, you can run 16 of any effects you want. You could do 8 reverbs and all the other effects. A wah, you can transpose it down, you can use the comp. So you can do all this stuff. There's no limitation. They've built it so that you can't like, oops, reverbs aren't available anymore. Delays not available anymore. Some people have done that. That's not good or bad. I'm just saying the fact that we're still able to max out the capability of Kemper, and on top of that, they were like, oh, and by the way, we can give you 8 more. Plus, we have this new profiling tech. I really think the sky is the limit. Now, some people might be going, well, it still looks too much like the old one for me to think it's a huge upgrade or something. And to that, I would just say, look, right now, where it sits right now, they don't make the Mark 1, they're making the Mark 2. Is it worth it to upgrade? Probably not. It's probably not worth it. All you're going to get right now if you sell your old Kemper and buy a new Mark II is you're going to get 8 new effects. Now, is that going to change when the new profiling's out? Yeah, that might change huge. And I'm probably going to be in a situation where I want to test out the new profiling. I want to provide feedback, and I'll probably be in a situation where I can't talk about it for a while until it's about to come out, until they want to start putting, content out there, and I'm going to respect that. And so this has to be my opinion going forward, right? It's because I got to get locked into this opinion. Because if I start changing it, you're going to know that I'm looking at the beta thing and it's this, and what's in it. And they might say, hey, we don't want a bunch of leaks. We just want to develop this thing and then we want to roll it out. I'm happy to help do that. I'm happy. I don't want to get in, I'm not trying to be a hindrance to anyone. So the opinion I'm going to have to stick with is it worth it to upgrade right now? I mean, probably not. If you're going to buy a Kemper, if you were going to buy a Kemper, I'd buy a new one, knowing that there's more capability. But if you have an old one, should you sell it right now and go get the new one? I don't see the rush to do that. I mean, if anything, I'd say get a player. You'll get access to some of these new effects and stuff, and you might not have a player already. Just get the player, right? So, but if you're going to buy a Kemper, definitely get a new one, I'd say, because we know that there's stuff coming. But if you have one right now, I don't see a reason to sell it and go grab and get a new one like ASAP. There's just not enough new stuff yet. But I got to ask myself, did they go through all this just to give us 8 new effects? No, because they went through all this to give us 8 new effects and profiling. But I also look at the history of Kemper and I go, they got more planned, man. And I don't have any inside information. I don't know anything. And somewhere Christoph's watching this going, or he's saying, that idiot. I don't know. But what I'm saying is there's no way they upgraded these processors and they don't have future plans. There's going to be more stuff. There's going to be updates. Of course they hear what people are saying. And the thing you got to remember, people aren't saying anything new. They're saying the same stuff they were saying 2 years ago and 3 years ago, 4, 5 years ago, in 2016, 17, 18. They've heard all this. All right? They've rolled out the new hardware. They've unified everything under one OS now. If you didn't see that, if you noticed that, it's all unified under one OS. We don't have the 2 OSs anymore. So everything's now under one OS. And is your old unit trash? No, it still sounds as good as ever. Does the new unit probably have a ton of potential? And are they probably planning a ton of new stuff? I think so. And is that new stuff going to be able to go to the old unit? I don't know. I think there's going to be limitations. I'm going to speculate now on this. The new profiling, I don't know if it's going to play on the old units. I don't know if it's going to sound the same on the old units. I don't know but I can't imagine. I'll tell you, me personally, as a profile maker, I'm not ready to say, hey, I don't support the old Kemper anymore at the Mark 1. I only do Mark 2 stuff. If the new Mark II has better profiling, I'll make the better profiles, and then I'll get the other Kemper out and make the great sounding Kemper profiles that we've always known and loved. I'll just do both. If there is backwards compatibility, or there's backwards compatibility where the Mark II can of course play all the old stuff. I'm playing one right now. But if the Mark Ones, if they do run the Mark II profiles, but maybe there's some limitation, maybe it can run. Because a lot of people have said, oh, they're not going to be able to run the unit because, I've heard some people give some explanations about AI and processing power. It can't run the unit. And I just look at them and I think to myself, do you think that little $150 Tonex unit can train the Tonex model? No, but it can play the Tonex model. See, the compute needed to set up a neural network for AI is there. Your iPhone can call up ChatGPT, and it's to think it uses GPUs somewhere else in the cloud. It's not using the GPU natively on your phone when you get on ChatGPT. You know what I'm saying? But you're interacting with it through your phone. So this is your interface. So when I hear people say, oh no, the old one's not going to be able to play it, I just go, are we sure about that? Because actually, it might take more power. It might take more processing power to create the new things, but not necessarily more to play them. Because then we're saying for some reason there's some reason the Kemper couldn't replay the correct thing. I don't necessarily think that's true. That's just my hunch. That's my hunch. I think we're going to be in a position where the new profiles are going to be able to be played on the old units, and maybe there's going to be parameters we can't tweak. Maybe they're going to sound a little different. Maybe there's some amount of I don't know, fidelity step down or something, or there's going to be less. But I don't think so. I really don't think so. But I could be wrong. I guess it's going to sound way better, but we're going to have to see on the playback. Like I think the new profiles, I can't imagine they'd jump out here and say, we got new profiling, unless it was significantly better. You know what I'm saying? And trust me, I'll hear if it's significantly better. I know this Kemper so well. You guys, when I plug in an AI, I've been doing this for so long now, and I'm not saying this like, oh, HW is the best. I'm just saying, you know what it's like. Anything you've been doing for a long time, especially you do it as your career, you get good at your career. You're a welder out there. You weld for 7 years. You're a lot better than your first year. You weld for 17 years. You're good. There's a guy out there in a welding company somewhere. He can weld with his eyes closed while he's smoking a cigarette with one hand. He's been welding for 37 years. He just does it in his sleep. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm not at the 37-year mark, but I'm at the 8-9 year mark with this unit. I'm at the 7, 8, 9 year mark with this unit. And so I'm just telling you, I know how the profile is going to sound slightly different from the main amp immediately. I know the feel of the Kemper. I know what happened. Well, I know which knob I want to turn. I know where I want the clarity. When I just hear that profile, I know exactly where I'm going to put the clarity. I can guess where the definition control is already. I know when it's going to be a 5 or 5.5. I can hear when it's going to be a 7. I can hear you just know stuff after a while. You just listen to the same thing in the same position all the time. You know stuff. My hunch is, because it's a Mark II, the old units are going to play the new stuff. I have no one's told me anything about this that confirms that or denies it. I'm just saying that's my hunch. I think the profiling is going to be significantly better. And I think that over the next several years, we're going to see some really great features come out for the Kemper Mark II that utilizes that new processor. We're going to see new stuff. I don't know what it's going to be. Maybe we're going to see something new around. I got no freaking idea, guys. Maybe we're going to see, these new processor, we're going to see a Kemper VST. And maybe we're going to see this new profiling, and we're going to see dual amps. I really would not be surprised. And I just want to be the guy who says, I think we are going to get that. because they're not deaf. And people have been saying it for so long. And I just think it's probably going to happen. And I think we're probably going to get a bunch of new effects stuff. And I think we're probably just going to I bet there's a whole bunch of stuff in the works. Effects, new types of effects. Um, you know, I don't even know yet. I don't even know. Maybe we're going to get some new software, graphical GUI kind of thing, I have no idea. But I've been around long enough to know that the guys at Kemper come up with new ideas. And yet everyone, whenever they come out with something, criticizes them for like, why didn't you give us the same thing that other people are doing? And that's never been what this unit is about. There's so much stuff in the Kemper that is not in other units. Just the deep editing alone, the definition, the clarity, the pick attack, the tube bias, the tube shape, just those parameters are like the stuff I want more out of digital, and yet it doesn't seem like the other units approach anything that way. The other units all take a very strict approach of we are copying the analog world. And Kemper to me is approaching it from a different way, where they're like, we're copying the sounds of amps and then we're giving you the ability to get the sound you want. Who cares what the analog world does? Who cares what the controls were on this or that? Now, of course, we have liquid profiling. Why do we have liquid profiling though, really? I've always thought in the back of my head, liquid profiling was the result of the community's feedback. Personally, I don't think liquid profiling is that beneficial to helping you get a better guitar sound. I really don't. Because how does it logically flow that in order for you to get a better guitar sound, you need the EQ that was designed into the Marshall Plexi in 1966? Why would that be the EQ you want? Why? Let me ask you a question. If that's the end all be all EQ, why do people put 1073s on the microphones to re-EQ the guitars? Why is that? Why? Because the 1073 can choose like the midpoint, where you're going to push the mids. It can choose the high and low shelf. So why would we be using those things on microphones if the best EQ is already on the Plexi? Not to mention all the old EQs are just volumes. They're just high low pass. They're just volumes for the high and low pass filter. So I don't know. I dig liquid profiles, but the liquid profiling thing to me, I've always thought it must just be a response to the community saying we want more authentic experience. I want to feel like the Vox is in front of me. And that's cool. That's a cool thing. But I've never heard an engineer say, damn, the guy came in here and recorded with the Vox and I didn't get to move the knobs. Nah, man, he always takes the track and uses his EQ, and the tools he's using are infinitely more flexible than the cut knob on your Vox. Does that make sense? So I just wouldn't bet. I think it's really dumb to take the company that obviously has the most kind of unique out of the box ideas. Now listen, it might not be the best like product in terms of ease of use, portability, whatever. But it's the only product that you can put your sounds on a USB and fly to another continent, and it's right there. You know what I mean? You can walk up to a stage that has a Kemper, plug in, hit a button, and you got your sounds from literally across the world that was in your pocket. Like, so if there's a Kemper on that side and a Kemper on this side, And why would you think that way? Where would you get that idea? I don't know, backlines? Like that's how amps were working. And so it's like, that's what I mean, where it's like, but you can't do that with, you can't actually do that with other things. You'd have to plug it in to a computer. You have to send it. It's a little, you see how that's a little more, you see how that's extra steps? It's not impossible. Obviously, it's easier than carrying your amp. It's easier to carry a laptop and, get a quad cortex or a Tonex on the other side. But do you see the thinking that goes into, being a touring musician, being a working musician, and how the tool can fit for them? Um, it's funny, like I remember when the Helix came out with that flux control, where they were like, you can now have the tremolo time ramp up and down. You can choose how long it takes to ramp up and down. They were like this new flux control, and that was for their new pedal. And they were like, and then we're going to And I remember when that came out, I remember thinking the Kemper has had this for nearly a decade already. There's always been a ramp up and ramp down control. And why wouldn't there be? That's something you'd want to control, and it's on analog gear. So of course it's built into the Kemper. But of course it doesn't have, those values can be zero. Like, because it's the digital world, you can do more. But you can sound like you're doing it in like the sounds we're all used to in the analog environment. So I'll just say this like one last time. If you're a person who's betting that the company and the platform that I think has had the most original ideas this whole time, and I don't say that to put anybody down, but I think if you look around, you realize the Helix has been designing every other product except for the Kemper since it came out, right? Everybody copies the Helix to some degree. I mean, you could even say Kemper. I don't think Kemper does, really, because aesthetically, there's nothing like, right? The screens are so different. But everybody else is like, hey, that's a really good presentation. We're going to do that. And they change it. We're going to do that. But you see where it came from. You know what I mean? It's the same way that you see all the cell phones out there they've seen the iPhone. All the Samsung line, they know about the iPhone. You know what I'm saying? You can see the lineage of ideas going backwards. So to me, I just go, there's this group of people, and by the way, I'm not saying this is the end-all be-all platform. I think there's other platforms that do things better, right? Like, I like the graphical representation on the Tone Master. I actually really enjoy that. I've talked about that a lot. I do actually feel like I have all that gear in my collection. Whereas the Kemper, I don't feel like I have all this gear in my collection. I don't feel like I have all the pedals in the world in my Kemper that are in the Kemper. I just know the sounds are there. It feels much more like a utility toolbox, to me. And I know how to use it well. And so I get what I want out of it. But in terms of just like building rigs that are fun to play, and I enjoy seeing the pictures and how good the Tone Master Pro looks and stuff. And I go, and it's just fun. It's just freaking fun to sit there and like put these rigs together and go, what a cool rig. And like I do in the real world, I find myself pulling in pedals that I think look really cool, maybe more than sound really cool, and pedals that are ugly I sometimes ignore, which is then like a benefit of maybe the Kemper, because everything's just sort of a list. Axe is like that too. It's like, there's not too much graphic stuff going on. Anyway, my point is, it's obvious to me that the one platform out there that just marches to the beat of their own freaking drum is Kemper. They have, I'm going to do another video like, top 3 features only the Kemper has. And there's a bunch of stuff they've had for over a decade that is so great and no one else has copied it. And I don't know why. I don't know why. Anyway, I'll do the video, but I just think when you look at this, there's clearly one platform that is just so different. It just approaches things so different, and in a way I really like. And you might go, oh, there's too many buttons and there's it. But it's unique. It's like, you can tell it's made by an engineer who's solving problems and who's practical and who's pragmatic about the problems. And, I just thinking that that platform that's been the most unique and still has some of the most unique features is somehow like they don't have any more ideas. I think that's crazy. And I think when they just dropped a Mark II with a different processor that we know has more power, DSP, whatever, and we're running all the stuff that was running on the old unit, that to me means there's just a ton of potential in front. And I just think it's dumb to think that people who have had all sorts of new ideas and new executions for stuff all of a sudden just stop thinking. I don't know where anyone developed such a theory. So I just look at what Kemper's done in the last, it's like since 2016, the last 9 years, since 2018. I don't know. I just look at what they've done since 2018 even, and I look at where they are now and all they've added from like 2018 to 2023, everything they added in that 5-year period. And I think that rate of change is probably still right ahead of us in terms of what these new units can do. And that's my thought, and I'm sticking to it. I've been HW. Good night, y'all.